Hello everyone, and welcome back to Darnley Cyber Cafe, where the Wi-Fi is always encrypted, coffee is hot, and knowledge is power. I'm your host, Darnley, and today we're stepping into the shadows. Today's topic, a confession of a hacker. This was an interesting story, and I wanted to highlight this because I don't usually hear these kinds of stories in the media about people from the past, present, and future of cybercrime in our society. Now, to pull the curtain a bit, I've got something special. I came across a chilling video from Vice where an anonymous hacker wearing a mask and all shares what he's seen after over 30 years of prowling as a hacker. Trust me, some of the things he reveals may blow your mind and honestly send a few chills down your spine. I'll play the audio clip in parts, and after each segment, I'll break it down and chat with you about what it means in plain language. So grab your mugs, I'm diving in.
Traditionally, a black hat hacker is one who is not bound by any kind of ethical code, willing to break the law, and is in it for specifically his own purposes. I, at one time, considered myself a black hat and changed to a white hat. White hats tend to be hackers who are bound by an ethical code, who try to do things to improve the greater good.
Okay, I'll stop it right there. So we have someone who used to enjoy being disruptive. He literally says he liked seeing how much chaos he could cause. And this is what we call a black hat hacker. No rules, no ethics, just digital anarchy. Now, as he said, here's the twist. He's gone white hat. So my question for you, my listeners, are what do you think would push someone to make that switch from breaking into systems to protecting them? Was it guilt, boredom, or just realizing he could get paid to do the same thing but legally? That's all I believe, and feel free to message me on your theories. I would love to feature some of these thoughts in a future episode. But what I'm saying with black hat hackers is that they, like I said, are sort of the pirates of the Caribbean, so to speak, in the digital landscape, if you want to kind of spin it that way. They really have those ethic issues. I've spoken to quite a number of people in my line of work personally, or some people I've come across randomly that I was able to ascertain that they are, or were hackers at some point. And I just wanted to know, besides what they've done illegally, but sort of the psychological component to all of it. What drives someone to do that? Because personally speaking, I don't know if I would be in the position or I would have the desire to do something like that for, let's say, black hat hacking, because to me, there is that ethical standard I try to hold myself to. And you're sitting there saying, oh, you're just grandstanding here, I'm sure you've done something wrong. Well, no, because I just cannot disrupt and damage infrastructure or be able to sleep at night knowing that I may have potentially caused an issue. So now I'm gonna, the next clip here is sort of his perspectives on the ransomware attacks and for those targeting hospitals and pipeline. And you can hear it from his own words in how this would have affected that. So I'll play the audio clip right now.
The challenge is it's not a scenario where you want to say, well, why don't we stop people from paying them? Because ultimately you have to protect the victims. I've watched hospitals get encrypted and people are left with a choice. Do I pay to decrypt the data or do I risk lives? Over the last year, we have definitely seen a significant acceleration in ransomware. And I think that's because there's been a huge increase in the profitability. Back when it started, ransomware was charging hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands of dollars for individual targets.
So I'll get into this in the next segment here regarding the pipeline and the effects of it. But this is a very interesting topic to talk about, or something to discuss. Just imagine someone locking you out of your computer. Now, just imagine that someone locking you out of the entire IT system of a hospital. So that includes things like patient records, life-saving machines, emergency departments, just all frozen. And this has happened. I understand the complexities and ethical choices that come to this. And I found myself in the early years of my business making these decisions for my customers at some point or another. Sure, I could have said, don't pay the ransomware, but there may be consequences to the organization. These ethical decisions and someone in my shoes is something I do not want to make. But as I learned from experience, to have proper disaster recovery procedures and tools in place is extremely key to avoid making these tough decisions at the end after an attack happens. But in the end, my customers had recovery processes in place to mitigate any of these particular effects of ransomware attacks. And again, I can tell you that many of those organizations you think you trust, do not have these recovery processes in place now. So typically after a breach or when something happens to them, they have to scramble and quite potentially pay the bad guys so that they can decrypt their system. So let me ask you, if you were in charge of a hospital and hackers demanded a $10 million ransom to unlock your systems, would you pay? Or would you gamble the lives or people's information and fight back? This is heavy stuff, but this is the reality that cybersecurity professionals deal with every day.
The bigger payouts that we're talking about now are easily into the tens of millions. This most recent attack, they offered $70 million for the campaign key, which is the key that would have unlocked every single computer encrypted during that attack. So we're talking high stakes games here. You have nation state actors who are basically doing what they need to do because the nation state that they are employed by wants them to do it. There are financially motivated criminals who are looking for whatever way that they can cash out. There are some people who just want to see the world burn, and those are destructive attackers who will go after systems just because they want to cause disruption.
$70 million, $70 million you mentioned there. This isn't just cyber mischief here. This is an organized crime at a global level. Now, I understand many of you don't really see or may not understand the effects, and I get it as to why. But I'm going to play another clip with him talking about a pipeline here, just because, you know, I'll run the clip and then we'll talk about it after.
This year is that we're not very good at understanding which systems are the ones that are most painful when they get encrypted. No one would have thought that a ransomware attack against someone like the Colonial Pipeline would cripple large amounts of the United States, but it did, because the supply chain dependency on that fuel caused a cascade problem throughout the whole of the US. Recently, we saw an attack against a company that supplies a lot of security providers, and it happened because of a vulnerability that was in the process of being fixed. It's challenging to deal with a situation where the bad guys are essentially moving faster than the good guys. The nature of the problem is that the advantage is always with the bad guy. Currently, we are mostly reactive.
So as I keep saying, in this industry, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And he puts it very clearly as to the problems that we as the good guys face with the ongoing cyber attacks. But he also mentioned the fact that there was really no way to understand the impacts of something that they may have done. For example, taking down the Colonial Pipeline in the United States. And the hackers may have just exploited something and not realized the damage that could be caused. And this is very interesting because, and this is something I wanted to highlight to all of you, because this is not something that will get brushed under the rug. We think about when these attacks happen, they are deliberate, they are precise, which is sometimes, yes, the case. However, there are many times where hackers disrupt systems and are not fully aware of what they're disrupting. So there is that on top of the rest of the noise that goes on as well. But also, I would like to mention that there is a digital underworld that has gone corporate, so to speak. So these guys have desks, customer service, payment portals, sort of like an Amazon for criminals. Let me play that clip too.
Economic marketplace now called the initial access broker market. These are people who sell compromised access to companies for the purpose of somebody else going in and using it to monetize it. This is only going to get bigger, and I don't think we have to worry too much about our nuclear arsenal being taken over movie style and used against us. But I do think we have to worry about things like major impacts to financial markets or potential impacts to things like electricity production facilities.
So another great sort of point to jump off here is he also mentioned the worry people have against our nuclear arsenal to be used against us. And he's absolutely correct about the disruptive nature of these attacks could have against the financial markets or like our power grid. Regarding the nuclear arsenal, they're usually air-gapped. So I tend to have not a strong belief that someone can go shoot our missiles. The different militaries around the world understand these basic principles and used air gap systems for this particular reason. So again, I would also echo that same sentiment that we shouldn't be worried about that. However, regarding the financial markets and most importantly, the power grid, because what is more powerful of a disruption than knocking out cities for weeks or even months? How would even that erode the cohesion of society when you have no access for food or water for your families or even to maintain order? Most of the time, cities, governments, provincial, state, federally have plans in place. But if you knock out a localized power grid, fine, no big deal. But if the power grid starts failing at a national level, or even half the country, the chaos that ensues will be more detrimental, believe it or not, than a nuclear bomb. And I say this very lightly because a nuclear bomb, like he said, in sort of the Hollywood style, is something that Hollywood tries to put in fear in us. But something as small as, or let's say big as, a power failure would disrupt our society if it was gone for more than a week. We don't envision these things, and even though there's like we're not dying in a nuclear wasteland, sure, but like I said, once the cohesion of society falls apart, like the police, military, all of those levels of government that start to erode, because people don't think about, okay, well, the police officers probably have families, the military people have families. They're not going to sit there and weather the storm of all the nonsense going on. They would want to protect their own families. So if you think about that as a long-term disruption, how that would erode the security of our society, and then basically it would be at some point, fend for yourself. And obviously a lot of people will die, and the hospital generators will start running out of fuel because those fuel trucks won't go and maintain the systems. The financial system will collapse because, things like Wall Street would collapse because there's nothing powering the servers anymore. So everything would be shut off. So you can imagine pretty quickly of how a hacker would probably think about these sort of things. And even if something is knocking down the markets and the grid, could have a disaster. Now, again, I'm trying not to talk doom and gloom here, but this hacker brings a good point about the fragility of our electrical grid. So that's the key. So another few things to take away here is, do you think the government should be more aggressive in going after these cyber groups? Should it be the government's responsibility to do this, or another third party of say a consortium of white hats? Would giving governments more power to fight ransomware mean giving them more power to snoop on you? Where does the line to not cross? I'll leave that with you. All right, now it's your turn. I want to hear from you, Cyberfam. Have you or someone you know ever dealt with ransomware? Do you think ethical hackers like white hats are heroes? Is the dark web something you'd want to explore with guidance, or better left alone? Feel free to message back or the show at darnleycybercafe@gmail.com. Your stories, your takes, yes, they make the cafe what it is today. We often think of hackers as villains in hoodies, but the real story, it's a lot more complicated than that. People change, technology evolves, AI gets smarter. The stakes keep getting higher and higher, just like the hacker behind the mask in this video. He probably did indeed do some bad stuff when he was younger, and then decided to do the right thing for the greater good. There's a saying, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Many of those who are experienced hackers or they know what they're doing are behind the screen may think twice about profiting greatly from these exposures. And many of these people that do bad things live in countries where it's an easy dollar to make. This is why, regardless if you're a business of any shape or just an ordinary human being, you should be conscious on where your data lives, where it goes, who controls it, and how you can protect it. These key fundamentals will determine the fate of you or your organization well into the future. The better question you need to ask is, when will this happen to you? Thank you for spending your time at Darnley Cyber Cafe. If this episode got you thinking, share it, rate the show, and don't forget to subscribe, because we've got more digital rabbit holes to explore in future episodes. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and for the love of coffee, remember, knowledge is power.